Hey guys, this is Jamie. So, in the past 2 weeks, I got new glasses and I pretty much got over a cold. So, with that out of the way, I wanted to talk about today's topic, which is performative males, and specifically the fact that people attack literacy and a man's desire, apparently, to read and make a better version of himself. Now, obviously, the manosphere is something that has fascinated me in a way, sort of like when you look at a void and you think, like, what the fuck is happening? Uh, in that way. And I even did my thesis around it and I've worked around it, so I'm very well aware of it. And I've done videos, countless videos on it as well. And technically, I'm considered like an expert because I did a thesis on it and like stuff like that. So, anyway, um, I want to start from the manosphere angle because I have to say that the manosphere goes into insane lengths of trying to make people also illiterate and sort of throw back into this traditional level where men shouldn't be reading sort of feminist literature, be aware of their surroundings, be racist, be homophobic, be xenophobic. And in general, sort of, it goes down a very, very dark, weird, bizarre, sexist alt-right pipeline. Like, if to put it very sort of to your face. And when we are judging performative males, the bottom line is that we are making a caricature, or people on TikTok or whatever make a caricature that there is this dude who is reading literature in order to get laid. And first of all, I wanted to say I don't know anyone who does that. I live in a university city. So the fact that there might be someone who tries to do that to get laid is absurd, considering the fact that on the opposite, I feel like everyone has this fetish, this idea of sort of sleeping with a trad guy or someone who, they can fix or whatever. So why would someone be reading feminist literature if they're getting ridiculed to get laid? That's sort of where I don't understand. And if we're going back to the facts of sort of alt-right, so they're the ones critiquing sort of men being too soy and stuff like that. So the facts that people from all sort of political spectrums mock on the man which is intellectual or is reading some feminist literature or is reading, I don't know, the bell jar or something, we end up making fun of what is the solution factually. So what do men need to be doing then? So do they need to be reading the bell jar and get mocked in public, or do they need to go into some Andrew Tate space, watch his videos, degrade the woman, degrade everyone around them, and think that they're the next shit just because they can do 3 push-ups and scream into a podcast mic that they can get 10,000 followers, which is probably bots anyway. People do understand sort of the bads of the manosphere, the bads of right wing, specifically the alt right, and specifically the fact that if we go into tradwife bullshit, this is something we should be pushing against because it's not even about the choice, it's an illusion of a choice. People think that, yeah, sure, we can have like back to traditional values, but if someone is choosing that and advocating for everyone else to do it while critiquing everyone else's choice, that's not very an opinion which is open to everyone's choice, is it? And for instance, there are obviously couples which enjoy a more traditional lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with it. But I feel like when it becomes degrading in any case, that's where we need to draw the line. How to put this very politely. If a woman does not have an opinion over her husband's, that's not very quality, is it? And this whole idea of performative males being a bad thing and a thing to ridicule just highlights the fact that right now we are in a proper crisis of masculinity because we are criticizing, obviously, right wing men because they are thinking that they are above everyone and being a white man has more power than it should. So instead of saying, hey, why don't you read some Balajar? Why don't you read some feminist literature? Why don't you read about history, which isn't like about the Roman Empire or something? Why don't you read about modern history? Why don't you read some literature? Or in general, people don't read. The literacy has been falling. People are using ChatGPT to summarize texts. People are using ChatGPT to write. And people just don't read literature anymore. People don't read history. People don't indulge in anything. People think that if they put the summary of a book to be summarized, or they don't even go to encyclopedias, they think that that is the same as reading a book. People barely even touch audiobooks these days. So what I want to say is this really the caricature we should be doing? Should we really be mocking men who read or men who seem to be performing the right side of politics? I mean, the proper side of politics is what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, why are we mocking a dude who appears to be left leaning just because we think that he is being performative? Why don't we mock proper men on the right side? Why don't we mock grifters? Why don't we mock podcasters? Why don't we mock gym bros who wants a wife to give them eggs and bacon 3 times a day? I don't know. And instead, we're mocking someone who might just be reading in public. And the fact that I have to make a video about this, the fact that I thought if I should even be making a video, because it's just everywhere, just pisses me off. And on top of that, like, we just cannot ignore the fact that if you go on social media or if you discuss with someone, someone will mention stuff like, oh, I'm scared of men. And then it ends up being not attacking and not addressing the actual men who do the damage, but it ends up being in the caricature. And it ends up being a generalization. And because people are so scared, and I do understand why, sort of the right wing man, it spreads into every man sort of in their brain. And then people listen to right wing rhetoric that's sort of like the soy man with a matcha latte is going to be absolute full of shit and won't be the right man for you. So people end up mocking it as well. So then we end up in a situation where we are taking the caricature which the right wing people are doing and we're taking it into our own space. And instead of mocking or making fun of something that is actually problematic, like uh, a man which is racist or is xenophobic or is homophobic, and we just end up making fun of a left winger who might just not be appealing just because it's a right wing joke. And because people end up fetishizing this idea, because we have fetishized the right side for a long time, because people have this fetish, people have this desire to sleep with someone who is alt-right or who is right-wing, because we think that, oh, that is the traditional male, but that is not what we need. And we end up sort of fetishizing this because we end up on this power trip because we see sort of the power they have and we end up being drawn to the power. And the thing is, we need to be dismantling that power. We should not be putting these people in power. We should not be giving them the power either. And then we end up with people like Erica Kirk jumping from one dude to another as long as he gets murdered, which ends up spewing the same bullshit. There is no loyalty. There is no humanity. There's just absolute hatred, grifting, no love, and just performance. And people end up in these performative families, in these performative relationships where they think that their ideology, their drive to a gods that is newly created is the reason to solidify their marriage and to just keep birthing children they won't even look at. And that is my issue. So when I see people projecting that they hate all men and then they end up mocking the sort of the soy latte dudes, I understand that what they're saying is that they would not sleep with this dude who's holding a latte because they think it's unmanly. because they'd rather be sleeping with a right wing, the right wing dude who will probably be the worst thing they've ever seen, who will not take their opinions in consideration and stuff. Because if we look at stats, for instance, there is a recent survey done about current men in the UK, and it's something upwards of 40% say that they do not want to date a woman who will not understand their traditional values, and that they would rather turn to a virtual girlfriend because they do not want to turn themselves differently because they want a fucking slave in their house. This is not normal. Putting the facts that we need to address the men with their right wing values, with their ideas that someone needs to be a slave to them, or asking why do these people need slaves in their own house? Why are we making fun of something that doesn't exist? So we end up being in this absolutely batshit scenario of like 1984, where someone is making up a random story, or even like if we go into history, and when people sort of blames on any ethnicity so that people would not focus on what the government is doing, we're doing the same thing with these performative males which don't even exist. Women, pals, everyone, we need to be focusing on the fact that the alt-right is fucking insane, and maybe we shouldn't be making fun of our own people. Like, maybe the dude who is holding the matcha latte will be also voting the same person you're voting. And maybe that makes a change. And maybe you should not be mocking the people in your own camp. But, who am I to judge? So this video ended up being sort of all over the place. I ended up getting very passionate. I'm still a bit ill, and I didn't realize that while I was recording. I only realized that after I was recording the video, and also like I've been through a bunch of meetings, so my language capacity is like all over the place. I've been like reading in Spanish. I've been speaking Portuguese all the time, and obviously I speak English with my partner, and I speak English like with some of my friends, some of my friends in Portuguese, and some in Russian. So it's just like my head's all over the place. What I wanted to say was we shouldn't be mocking the people who are in our camp, and we should not be doing caricatures of ourselves when there is a crisis in the world. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like. If you want to fight me, feel free to drop that in the comments, or, hold it wherever, whatever, post it on the wall. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I got really fired up, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.